What's up, YouTube? This is your girl, Megan. Welcome back to my channel, to all of my returning subscribers. But if this is your first time joining me on today, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way in because you know you want to. And as the title suggests, today I will be talking about mental illness and astrology, as well, or more specifically, the different mental health or mental illness indicators in a birth chart. And those of you all who have been subscribed to my channel for a while know that I myself have been diagnosed with bipolar depressive disorder. It's something that I've dealt with most of my life, actually, and it's nothing that I'm ashamed of. It's not a secret. It's not, it's none of that. I'm very transparent about it. Therefore, this topic means a lot to me because anyone who also has had a mental illness diagnosis or has a loved one who has knows how impactful it can be on your everyday life, your overall well-being. And so, as an astrologer, whenever I'm looking at charts, especially if somebody explicitly and comes to me and says, oh, I feel like I've been dealing with this, that, and the third, right? There are certain things that I tend to look at first to see if it's possible if they could be suffering from a mental illness. Now, before I get into the video, I do want to start off by saying I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist of any sort. I am not a medical professional. Therefore, coming to an astrologer or any type of occult practice in substitution for actually going to a doctor and seeking medical professional help is like not advised. Okay, so let's just put that out there. However, in astrology, there are some common trends and themes that a lot of astrologers tend to notice when we're dealing or working with people who have mental illness. So let's go ahead and get started. So the two primary planets that you want to look at first is both Mercury, right? Because Mercury governs your conscious mind, your intellect, your capacity to carry information, your capacity to process information and even disseminate information and communicate with others. It can also implicate your mental state, right? How your mind functions on an everyday level. And then also the moon, because the moon is our subconscious mind, right? The moon governs our emotions, but it's kind of our instinctive hardwiring and the way that we're programmed. And any major afflictions to these two planetary bodies can be detrimental to, the way that you process information, to the way that you interact with other people, and the way that your mind functions. Okay. And essentially, that's exactly what mental illness is. It's a disrupt in the way that your brain or the way that your moods are functioning and processing. And in that same vein, the moon also deals with your moods. Okay, your mood cycles, right? Because you can have personality disorders, you can have mood disorders. Once again, I'm not a psychologist, so all of my psych majors and doctors and whatnot, feel free to add on to like the technical terms and whatnot. But those are the two primary planetary bodies that you want to look at first, okay? Because they can really give you some major clues about a person. Now, when it comes to signs, right? So specifically, Mercury in Aquarius. And while typically Mercury in Aquarius can be a favorable placement, as it does create an extraordinary mind, a very intellectual mind, and a mind that is capable of almost even downloading information directly onto their brain from the stratosphere. Like, people who are naturally, they naturally know things without even learning, without even trying. Like, these could be some of the most brilliant scientific minds. However, a pitfall of Mercury in Aquarius is that if afflicted, Or let's say if it's placed in a very sorrowful house, like the 12th house, it can manifest in a person who is, although they may have some distinct intellectual capabilities in certain areas, their ability to process and pick up on information from the cosmos can be kind of overwhelming, okay? Because they have an incredibly intuitive and psychically inclined mind. Think about it like even antennas, like Mercury in Aquarius is the antenna placement, right? They're picking up, they're constantly downloading information, constantly downloading stimuli to the point where if afflicted or negatively placed, it can produce kind of like an overload. And these people don't really know how to function, and it can manifest in outward awkwardness. And I'm not talking about just being weird, because of course being weird doesn't mean you have any type of mental disorder, mental health affliction, but we're talking extreme, okay? It can manifest in extreme bouts of mental or social awkwardness, or think about Asperger's syndrome or various forms of autism, right? Where there's something off about the way in which these people interact with the world, right? And the way that these people are able to communicate and express themselves. And typically when you have autistic individuals, a lot of them tend to be very, very talented at certain things. I've seen autistic people, be able to go on to be prodigies. Like maybe they play the piano really well, or the violin really well, or maybe they're really good at science. I mean, that's Mercury in Aquarius as well. I'm thinking about the movie The Rain Man, the guy who I think he had some form of autism rather. But I mean, when it came to numbers and math and being able to calculate and process numbers, oh my God, like you have a jar of marbles and he could look at the jar and tell you how many marbles were in the jar. Or you give him a crazy problem to solve and he would solve it like with his eyes closed without pen and paper, and people would be stumped. Like, what the fuck? Like, how does he know this? But there was an inability to really interact on a lower level. Mercury in Aquarius can produce a lack of common sense. It can produce a lack of social, like I said, mobility, or like your ability to really connect and communicate with people around you. And these people can just handle themselves in a way that's very peculiar and strange. And so that's definitely a manifestation of Mercury in Aquarius. So yeah, there's that. But then also Mercury in Pisces, which is kind of a similar configuration, in the sense that much like Mercury in Aquarius, people who have Mercury in Pisces can be very sensitive to information from the cosmos, and Mercury is in its detriment in Pisces. So it naturally is going to function very oddly here because it doesn't like it. And this is not to say, obviously, everybody who has their Mercury in Pisces has some type of mental health disorder. Of course, if afflicted, these people can kind of have the same thing going on as people who have their Mercury in Aquarius, in the sense that they can suffer from having a surplus of spiritual information, I guess you can say, going on in their heads, and it can manifest in mental disturbances, various mental disturbances. And another common, I guess you could say, mental ailment that I see with, Mercury in Pisces afflicted, or even Mercury in the 12th house, is schizophrenia. Okay. And according to people who have schizophrenia, they describe it as there being voices, right? Them hearing voices, them hearing things, telling them to do stuff. And sometimes it can even push them to the point of committing acts of violence, or just really freaking them out, them being completely detached from the world around them. That is so Mercury in Pisces, or Mercury even in the 12th house, okay? Because, like I said, there is this sense of the reality, the veil of reality being so very thin, Okay, because when you think about it, Pisces governs the 12th house. So it's like these people are constantly receiving stimuli and messages from celestial beings. And these could be light beings, these could be dark beings, which is why, once again, I mean, it can manifest in a variety of ways when it comes to their behaviors and a lot of the way that it, it appears on the outside. So another indicator of like a mental health affliction is Mercury when placed in Gemini or Virgo if it's negatively aspected, okay? Or just placed in an unfavorable house or something like that. Now, although Mercury does traditionally govern Gemini and Virgo, and therefore it can produce an enhanced level of like cognitive function, very similar to Mercury in Aquarius, in the sense that these people can have they can be very intelligent people. However, okay, they are susceptible to certain mental illnesses due to an increased level of mental activity, okay? As the waking mind tends to process information a lot quicker than most. And this could also translate into many forms of anxiety, restlessness. I mean, we're talking ADHD with Gemini, and Gemini is also commonly associated with bipolar disorder. So Mercury in Gemini afflicted or something, let's say it's squaring Neptune or something like that, right? Or let's say it's placed in the 8th house. Okay. Yeah, it can be some problems. You can have some problems. Now, with this placement, the mind can kind of even be like a window browser with 13 tabs open, right? And it's almost as if the conscious mind is split in two when Mercury is in Gemini, that duplicit nature. And with Mercury in Virgo, the mind is more so geared towards the daily biorhythms of life, making a negatively aspected Mercury Virgo prone towards anxiety as well, but also mental health disorders that thrive off of routines, such as OCD, right? They can also branch off into irregularities and disorders surrounding food and exercise, such as bulimia, nervosa, anorexia, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, even with OCD, a lot of people feel compelled to perform rituals and whatnot, and when they don't do it, it gives them extreme bouts of anxiety. That's very much that Virgo energy, okay? But most of them stem from obsessive thoughts, irrational fears, as well as a desire for control. Once again, that is Mercury in Virgo. Another placement of mental health affliction can also be Scorpio, depending on where, what sign it's placed in, specifically the moon. Okay, because much like a Virgo moon or a person with their Mercury in Virgo, as just described, these people are also prone to very intense bouts of obsession. But I would say it would be worse with Scorpio because it's obsession to almost like it's impulsion. It's an obsessive compulsion kind of thing. And these people are also very vulnerable to demons and demonic activity because this constellation Scorpio sits right at the astral realm. So it's like, and the astral realm is a major hangout spot for a lot of like dark forces and demonic activity, but that's a different topic for a completely different video. Nonetheless, these people are very likely to have demonic entities latch on to them. And it can cause their behavior to malfunction, their moods to malfunction, and it can manifest in a variety of different ways, okay? But also, with the moon representing our emotions, the moon in Scorpio, it can produce a person who has very extreme emotions, a person who goes to the extreme, okay, from one direction to another. If they really like something or they're really pleased, they can revel in it and love it, and it's just to the fifth. Everything is to the 15th degree. But if they hate something, they despise it. It's disgusting, and these people are liable to undergo many transformative states of being. And like I said, that can erupt and it can manifest in a host of, really personality disorders primarily. I see a lot of people with personality disorders have Scorpio moons that are afflicted in some way, or that are placed in the more unfortunate houses. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Also, you want to take a look at where a person's Saturn is in their chart, specifically if this person is dealing with depression, because Saturn is the planet of depression, much like Capricorn, because Saturn does govern Capricorn. Okay, so wherever you see Capricorn or Saturn, like especially if it's placed in the 8th house, the 12th house, I've even seen Saturn in the 4th negatively aspected, that can create a person who's has a relentless case of depression. But, Saturn also it represents restrictions and where karmic lessons must be learned. So when placed in any of the aforementioned signs, such as like Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, or signs that are just naturally more prone towards harboring mental illness, it can definitely result in mental health afflictions. Of course, this can vary, right, by how once again, it's aspected, but particularly one of the biggest, the most notorious aspects or Saturn aspects for depression is moon square Saturn, right? With our moon being our emotions, the way that we feel, right? And negative aspects to Saturn, this could absolutely result in depression, because it's essentially Saturn with a chokehold around your mood and around your subconscious mind. And Saturn causes you to see the world from a more pessimistic, gloom, humdrum point of view. For example, okay, I have Saturn in the 4th house. Okay, and my Saturn is forming a quincunx to my moon. And yeah. I'm depressed a lot. And Mercury squaring Saturn would produce a very similar effect. Now, also, the moon in negative aspects to Mercury could even produce issues with your mental health, as well as it can open the door towards like bipolarism even. But also the moon can be very hysteric. It can bring on bouts of hysteria, mania. So once again, kind of even going in that same vein of like bipolar disorder, right? Where you have like your manic state, your depressive state, and the moon is it fluctuates a lot. So in negative aspects to Mercury, this can, it can wreak havoc on your mental state. Also, the moon conjoined to your south node for that very reason, that hysteria, that lunacy, and very, very similarly, Cancer south nodes can have this issue as well. And as I mentioned in some of my previous videos, Cancer is one of the signs that's very much prone towards like irrational fears. These people can get lost in just imagining the worst case scenarios, can become overwhelmed and overtaken by their moods and their emotional traumas, if they have any, which is why, if afflicted, let's say if these people had a very troublesome upbringing or something like that, and you have your, moon, oh God forbid, moon conjoined to your Cancer south node, all you need is like a traumatic experience to activate that. And that could absolutely manifest in a variety of different illnesses, mood disorders and personality disorders and whatnot. So yeah, that's something else to keep in mind. Be mindful of that. I'm a Cancer south node too, so trust me, I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I know. The moon squared Neptune could also have some very devastating impacts on your mental health, as much like Mercury in Pisces or even Pisces moons. they can be very, very sensitive, or even, you know, people with their Mercury and Aquarius, they carry this aspect, can carry that same level of sensitivity and make one prone to becoming overwhelmed by a surplus of stimuli. Okay. Now, also, the sun square the moon that can absolutely produce a personality disorder of some sort, or bipolar disorder, as it reflects two different parts of your psyche not meshing with one another, kind of thwarting one another, limiting one another. There being trade-offs between your emotional state of being and your more rational state of being. And I've seen people, you know, with this get up really struggle in the mental health department, myself included. I feel like I got all these damn indicators. That sun square moon is no joke. And finally, taking a look at where Chiron, which is the asteroid that deals with like the wounded healer, is what a lot of people call it. And it can point towards where things are extraordinary, unusual, but also where there are very deeply ingrained psychological, sometimes even physical too, traumas, right? In a person's life, and looking at where that's placed. So any negative aspects between Chiron and the moon that could absolutely deal with deep traumatic wounds to the subconscious mind that interrupt your functioning moods, your emotions, and the way that your mind functions. And Mercury squared Chiron could have a very similar effect as well. And it also matters what sign Chiron is in, because I've even seen a person who has like their Chiron in Gemini and is squaring their moon, right? That's bipolar all day long. So yeah, that concludes my comprehensive list of mental health indicators or mental illness indicators in astrology. Y'all let me know if I missed anything, or if there are some fellow astrologers watching this video, what are some placements that you guys look at or look for. Okay, feel free to, you know, drop down in the comment section, share your experience with mental illness, if any. Okay, do you know somebody who suffers from mental illness? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions on that. And yeah, until the next video, make sure you guys practice unconditional self-love so that you can love others. And as always, until the next time, I holla.